It's a lot of money. I mean, 28 million, 7 million a year is a lot of money for a guy that you didn't actually require to do anything.
Kawhi Leonard pulled a scheme to bypass the NBA's salary cap. Terrence Williams scammed the league's health insurance program for millions, and they weren't the only ones. In this video, we're looking at broke NBA players who committed insane financial frauds to chase more money. Let's start with the player whose scheme is making headlines right now, Kawhi Leonard. On September 3, 2025, Pablo Torre dropped an investigative piece that shook the league. According to investigative journalist Pablo Torre's explosive report, Kawhi Leonard signed a $28 million four-year endorsement deal in April 2022 with Aspiration, a Los Angeles-based green bank focused on sustainability initiatives. What makes this deal so controversial isn't just its massive size, but the allegation that it functioned as a no-show job, designed to funnel additional compensation to Leonard outside his NBA contract, thereby circumventing the league's salary cap rules. Clippers owner Steve Ballmer invested $50 million in Aspiration through his personal LLC on September 14, 2021. Shortly after this investment, on September 27, 2021, the Clippers announced a $300 million partnership with Aspiration, including sponsorship for their new arena, the Intuit Dome, and a jersey patch deal. This web of financial relationships creates a compelling narrative for investigators who suspect that Leonard's subsequent endorsement deal was part of a larger scheme to provide him with additional compensation outside the constraints of NBA salary cap rules. Torre's investigation, which reportedly involved reviewing over 3,000 pages of internal documents and interviewing former Aspiration employees, revealed several damning details about the nature of Leonard's arrangement with Aspiration. The endorsement deal was signed between Aspiration and KL2 Aspire LLC, a company managed by Leonard, with KL2 referencing his initials and jersey number, and stipulated $7 million annual payments over 4 years, totaling $28 million. What makes this deal particularly suspicious from an NBA perspective is a clause that allowed Leonard to decline to proceed with any action desired by the company while still receiving payment, effectively requiring no promotional work. Even more damning is another clause that reportedly terminated the deal if Leonard left the Clippers or retired, tying the payments directly to his tenure with the team. Torres. Investigation found no evidence of Leonard performing any marketing or endorsement activities for Aspiration, such as commercials, social media posts, or public appearances. The only public connection between Leonard and Aspiration was a 2023 Clippers tweet stating, "Happy birthday, Kawhi. For every comment retweet, at Aspiration will plant one tree for Kawhi's birthday." Hardly the type of substantial promotional work that would justify a $28 million endorsement deal. Perhaps most damaging of all is the testimony from a former Aspiration employee who provided Torre with insider information about the deal's true purpose. A former Aspiration Finance Department employee, speaking anonymously with a voice modifier on Torre's podcast, claimed they were told the deal was designed to circumvent the salary cap, LOL. The employee noted that Leonard's $28 million payment dwarfed other celebrity endorsements like Robert Downey Jr., Leonardo DiCaprio, and Drake, which collectively amounted to less than a quarter of Leonard's deal. The company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy in March 2025, and its co-founder, Joseph Sandberg, pleaded guilty in August 2025 to defrauding investors and lenders of over $248 million through wire fraud. The bankruptcy filings revealed the extensive financial entanglements between Aspiration and Ballmer's empire, listing the Clippers as the largest creditor, owed $30 million, followed by Forum Entertainment, another Ballmer-owned entity, owed $11 million, and KL2 Aspire LLC owed $7 million. The Clippers and Ballmer have responded to these explosive allegations with vehement denials and claims that they were victims rather than perpetrators of fraud. Their primary defense centers on the argument that neither the team nor Ballmer circumvented the salary cap or engaged in misconduct related to Aspiration. They claim that Ballmer's $50 million investment was made because Aspiration's co-founders presented themselves as committed to environmental and customer-focused initiatives, not to funnel money to Leonard.
Was there an exception made in terms of our relationship with Aspiration? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. This is a company that I got to know, frankly, through them approaching us about a sponsorship deal. My family and I were super keen to do work to stem climate change. We think that's an important thing.
In a particularly noteworthy interview with ESPN's Ramona Shelburne on September 4th, 2025, Ballmer claimed he was conned by Aspiration, emphasizing that the Clippers had already signed Leonard to a 4-year, $176 million extension in 2021 before the Aspiration deal was made.
Remember, they defrauded me, they defrauded many other investors much bigger than me.
Up next, we have the man who orchestrated what would become one of the most shocking fraud schemes in NBA history, Terrence Williams. Williams entered the NBA with tremendous promise. Selected 11th overall by the New Jersey Nets in the 2009 NBA draft, he was the embodiment of basketball talent meeting opportunity. Standing at 6'6" with the versatility to play multiple positions, Williams seemed destined for a solid NBA career. And for a while, he delivered on that promise, carving out a respectable niche across 4 different teams: the Nets, Celtics, Rockets, and Kings, while averaging 7.1 points per game and earning approximately $6.2 million throughout his professional basketball journey. But it was what Williams did after his playing days ended that would cement his place in NBA infamy. Between 2017 and 2020, while most retired players were adjusting to life after basketball, Williams was busy constructing an elaborate criminal enterprise that would defraud the NBA's health and welfare benefit plan of nearly $4 million. The scheme itself was breathtakingly audacious in its scope and sophistication. Williams didn't just stumble into fraud, he became the architect of a carefully orchestrated operation that exploited the very system designed to protect former NBA players. He meticulously recruited other former NBA players, providing them with fake invoices from a chiropractic office in Encino, California, 2 dentist offices in Beverly Hills, and a wellness office in Washington State to support fraudulent claims for medical and dental services that were never actually performed. Williams received at least $230,000 in kickbacks from 10 players, including $30,000 from Will Bynum. But perhaps most shocking of all, Williams went so far as to impersonate a health plan employee to further the scheme, and when some players hesitated to pay their kickbacks, he resorted to threats and intimidation tactics that would make loan sharks proud. The walls eventually came crashing down on Williams' criminal empire. In a federal courthouse that had seen its share of high-profile cases, Williams stood before a judge and pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit healthcare and wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. The sentence was as severe as it was decisive: 10 years in prison and an order to pay $2.5 million in restitution, handed down in August 2023. Next.
Because they think I did something that I know I didn't do. You know what I mean? That I know that I'm innocent. You know what I mean? The whole situation, I never got any money.
Wow.
That's the thing.
No money. But you're a part of this indictment.
I'm a part of this indictment.
We have another NBA player who got involved in this scam after losing his wealth. Glenn Big Baby Davis, Ronald Glenn Davis, affectionately known throughout his NBA career as Big Baby, represents one of the most heartbreaking falls from grace in recent basketball history. This is a man who once stood on the highest peak of professional basketball success, celebrating as an NBA champion with the Boston Celtics in 2008, basking in the glory that comes with winning the sport's ultimate prize. Yet, just over a decade later, he would find himself in federal court, convicted in November 2023 for his role in the same healthcare fraud scheme that brought down Terrence Williams. Davis's NBA journey was one of consistent production and financial success. Throughout his career with the Celtics, Magic, and Clippers, he established himself as a reliable big man who could contribute both offensively and defensively. His efforts on the court were handsomely rewarded, as Davis earned over $32 million during his professional basketball career. But somewhere along the way, the financial security that should have lasted a lifetime began to erode. Like many professional athletes who struggle with the transition from active playing to retirement, Davis found himself facing mounting financial pressures. Reports indicate he struggled with child support payments and failed investments post-retirement, the kind of financial quicksand that has swallowed many former professional athletes. It was in this context of financial desperation that Davis made the fateful decision to join Williams's fraudulent scheme. Federal prosecutors presented evidence showing that Davis submitted false claims, including one for crowns on 8 teeth in Beverly Hills while he was actually in Nevada. Prosecutors also revealed that Davis submitted a claim for crowns on the same 6 teeth on the same day as 2 other players. A coincidence so impossible that it essentially served as a smoking gun, proving the fraudulent nature of the entire operation. When the legal reckoning finally arrived, Davis faced the full weight of federal justice. In May 2024, he was sentenced to 40 months in prison, with 3 years of supervised release and ordered to pay $80,000 in restitution. For a man who once celebrated championship glory in front of thousands of cheering fans, the image of him being led away in handcuffs represents one of the most dramatic reversals of fortune imaginable. Also involved in this scam is the next entry on this list, Will Bynum. Will Bynum. During his NBA career, Will Bynum was known as a scrappy, determined point guard who carved out a respectable niche in the league, despite being undersized and overlooked by many scouts. His tenacity on the court with teams like the Detroit Pistons and Washington Wizards earned him the respect of teammates and fans alike, along with approximately $22 million in career earnings, a substantial fortune that should have provided financial security for decades. But apparently not. Bynum's participation in the healthcare fraud scheme wasn't passive or accidental. It was deliberate and calculating. Federal prosecutors presented evidence showing that Bynum submitted fraudulent claims, including one for $182,000 related to a chiropractic office in Encino, California. The staggering amount of this single fraudulent claim, $182,000, represents more money than many Americans earn in multiple years of honest work. Even more damaging to Bynum's case was his direct financial relationship with scheme ringleader Terrence Williams. Prosecutors proved that Bynum paid Williams a $30,000 kickback, a payment that transformed him from a mere participant in fraud to an active accomplice in a criminal conspiracy. While he was acquitted of a fraud conspiracy charge, he was found guilty of conspiracy to make false statements, a distinction that may seem minor to casual observers but represents an important legal nuance in federal criminal law. The conviction on the conspiracy to make false statements charge means that while the jury didn't find sufficient evidence that Bynum conspired to commit fraud in the broadest sense, they were convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that he knowingly participated in a scheme to make materially false statements to federal authorities. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison. Next on this list is another NBA star who found himself ensnared in the healthcare fraud scheme: Tony Allen. Tony Allen's involvement in the NBA healthcare fraud scheme was one of the most surprising and disappointing aspects of the entire scandal. Here was a player who had built his reputation on integrity, defensive excellence, and team-first mentality throughout a distinguished career that included 6 NBA All-Defensive Team selections and a 2008 NBA championship with the Boston Celtics. Allen was known as the Grind Father during his time with the Memphis Grizzlies, a nickname that perfectly captured his relentless work ethic and unwavering commitment to doing whatever it took to help his team succeed. His defensive prowess was legendary among NBA circles, and his ability to shut down the league's most explosive offensive players made him one of the most respected players of his generation. This reputation, combined with his consistent performance over more than a decade in the league, resulted in career earnings of around $40 million playing for the Celtics and Grizzlies. Unlike some of the other players in this scheme, Allen's financial situation wasn't necessarily dire when he chose to participate in the fraudulent activities. What makes Allen's case particularly unique and troubling is that he wasn't acting alone. Allen was charged in the healthcare fraud scheme alongside his wife, Desiree Allen, making her the only non-NBA player indicted in the entire scandal. When Allen's legal reckoning finally arrived, his approach to the charges demonstrated a level of wisdom that had been notably absent when he made the decision to participate in the scheme. Allen pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit healthcare and wire fraud, accepting full responsibility for his actions rather than forcing the government to prove his guilt at trial. Allen's cooperation with federal authorities and his willingness to acknowledge his wrongdoing resulted in remarkably lenient treatment from the justice system. Rather than facing years in federal prison like some of his co-conspirators, Allen avoided jail time entirely, receiving a sentence of 3 years probation and community service. Federal prosecutors specifically recommended the shorter sentence due to his acceptance of responsibility, highlighting how cooperation with authorities can dramatically impact sentencing outcomes in federal criminal cases. Despite avoiding prison time, Allen's involvement in the fraud scheme has had lasting consequences for his reputation and legacy. His involvement in the fraud scheme tarnished his reputation and highlighted the risks of financial mismanagement, transforming him from a respected defensive specialist into a cautionary tale about how even successful athletes can make catastrophically poor financial decisions. The next entry in this video went from hero to fraudster after a pretty successful career: Sebastian Telfair. Sebastian Telfair's story is perhaps one of the most tragic examples of squandered potential and poor decision-making in modern NBA history. Once hailed as a basketball prodigy who would skip college to jump directly from Abraham Lincoln High School in Brooklyn to the NBA, Telfair was supposed to be the next great point guard in a league that had seen the likes of Magic Johnson and Jason Kidd dominate the position. Telfair entered the NBA with tremendous fanfare and expectations that few teenagers could reasonably be expected to meet. As a former high school phenom who played for 8 NBA NBA teams, his career was characterized by constant movement and the inability to establish himself as a consistent contributor for any single franchise. Despite the challenges of living up to his early hype, Telfair managed to maintain an NBA career that spanned multiple seasons and resulted in career earnings of about $19 million. However, like many professional athletes who entered the league at a young age without proper financial education or guidance, Telfair faced financial difficulties post-retirement. The transition from earning millions as a professional athlete to managing money as a retired player proved to be far more challenging than any defensive scheme he had faced on the basketball court. These financial pressures created the perfect storm of desperation and poor judgment that would ultimately lead to his involvement in criminal activity. When Terrence Williams began recruiting former NBA players for his elaborate healthcare fraud scheme, Telfair became one of the willing participants. Telfair was charged in the healthcare fraud scheme for submitting false claims, joining a growing list of former players who had chosen to pursue illegal financial gains rather than explore legitimate post-basketball opportunities. Still, he denied any wrongdoing.
Man, we was in litigation with the NBA before the FBI. I don't even know how to answer this. Okay. I don't even want to be in the conversation with the FBI, bro. I ain't gonna lie to you, but bro, that's our money. So what I do want to say very clear to people, because when they read the description, they say healthcare fraud, and it sounds like we got to go steal everyone's healthcare fraud. No, that's cap. Big Baby got Big Baby's money. Bassy got Bassy money. This one got you only could go into your account.
The legal consequences of Telfair's criminal activities have continued to impact his life years after his initial conviction, in a development that underscores just how seriously federal authorities take violations of supervised release terms. Telfair began serving a 6-month sentence at FCI Fort Dix in New Jersey in 2025 for violating supervised release related to the fraud case. This additional prison time represents a failure to comply with the conditions of his initial sentence, suggesting that Telfair's problems with following legal requirements have persisted even after his criminal conviction. Next, we have a talent who got involved in fraud after irresponsibly wasting all his wealth: Darius Miles. Darius Miles' story represents perhaps the most tragic example of squandered potential and misguided decisions among all the players discussed in this video. Miles entered the NBA straight from high school as part of a generation of young players who were bypassing college to pursue immediate professional opportunities. As a former high school standout drafted by the Los Angeles Clippers, Miles was seen as one of the most promising young talents in basketball, possessing the size, athleticism, and skill set that NBA scouts coveted in the early 2000s. During his 9-year NBA career, Miles showed flashes of the brilliance that had made him such a highly sought-after prospect coming out of high school. His versatility, athletic ability, and basketball IQ helped him carve out a respectable professional career that resulted in career earnings of nearly $62 million. For most people, $62 million would represent an almost incomprehensible level of wealth, the kind of money that could support multiple generations of a family and provide financial security for life. However, like many young athletes who achieve financial success before developing the maturity and wisdom to manage it properly, Miles' approach to money management proved to be catastrophically flawed. Miles declared bankruptcy due to extravagant spending and failed investments, suggesting that his financial problems weren't the result of a single bad decision, but rather a pattern of poor financial choices that accumulated over time. The specific details of Miles' extravagant spending haven't been as widely publicized as some other players, but the fact that he managed to lose $62 million suggests a level of financial recklessness that bordered on the surreal. Whether through expensive cars, jewelry, real estate, entertainment, or supporting friends and family, Miles apparently spent money at a rate that exceeded even his substantial NBA income. His failed investments represent another common pitfall for professional athletes who attempt to diversify their income streams without proper expertise or guidance. Many athletes are approached by promoters and business partners who promise enormous returns on various investment opportunities, but who lack either the competence or the integrity to deliver on their promises. For Miles, these failed investments likely consume millions of dollars that could have provided long-term financial security. What transformed Miles from simply another cautionary tale about athlete financial mismanagement into a criminal defendant was his decision to participate in the same healthcare fraud scheme that ensnared so many other former NBA players. Miles was charged in the 2021 healthcare fraud scheme for submitting false claims, joining the growing list of former players who had chosen to pursue illegal financial gains rather than legitimate post-basketball opportunities. The combination of Miles's pre-existing bankruptcy and his subsequent involvement in federal criminal activity creates a stark example of how a combination of poor financial decisions and fraudulent activities can lead to complete financial ruin. His case demonstrates how financial desperation can lead to increasingly poor decision-making, with each bad choice making the next one seem more reasonable or necessary. Miles' story is especially relevant for players drafted young without financial education, highlighting one of the most significant challenges facing modern professional sports, when teenagers or young adults suddenly gain access to millions of dollars without proper preparation or guidance. The potential for financial disaster is enormous. Miles's experience serves as a cautionary tale about the critical importance of financial education and proper advisory support for young athletes. Furthermore, Miles's progression from financial mismanagement to criminal activity illustrates how financial pressure can corrupt decision-making processes and lead otherwise intelligent people to make choices they would never consider under normal circumstances. The desperation that comes with losing a substantial fortune can create a mindset where illegal shortcuts seem not just acceptable, but necessary. Up next is a case that exposed the extent a team would go to circumvent NBA regulations. Joe Smith. Joe Smith, born in Norfolk, Virginia, was a standout college basketball player at the University of Maryland, earning College Player of the Year honors in 1995. His dominance at the collegiate level translated into being selected as the first overall pick by the Golden State Warriors in the 1995 NBA Draft, ahead of future stars like Kevin Garnett, Rasheed Wallace, and Jerry Stackhouse. Smith showed early promise during his rookie season, averaging 15.3 points and 8.7 rebounds per game, and earning a spot on the 1995-96 NBA All-Rookie First Team. However, his performance never fully met the expectations of a top pick, and after 2.5 seasons with the Warriors, he was traded to the Philadelphia 76ers during the 1997-98 season. By the time Smith became a free agent in 1999, following the NBA's lockout-shortened 1998-99 season, he was a sought-after player, but not considered a superstar. His market value was significant, as he had previously turned down an $80 million extension from the Warriors, expecting a lucrative deal in free agency. This decision would prove to be one of the most financially devastating mistakes in sports history, though Smith himself was largely unaware of the machinations that would ultimately cost him tens of millions of dollars. The Minnesota Timberwolves, a franchise still in its early years, were building around their young star, Kevin Garnett, who had been drafted 5th overall in 1995. The team faced significant financial constraints due to the NBA's salary cap, which for the 1998-99 season was approximately $30 million. Teams exceeding this limit faced restrictions unless they utilized exceptions, such as the Larry Bird provision, which allowed teams to re-sign their own free agents above the cap after 3 years of continuous service. The Timberwolves saw Smith as a valuable addition but lacked the cap space to offer him a market value contract. To circumvent these restrictions, the Timberwolves and Smith's representatives devised what would become one of the most notorious illegal agreements in NBA history. In January 1999, Smith signed a 1-year contract with the Timberwolves for $1.75 million, significantly below his estimated market value of $6 million annually. This deal raised eyebrows across the league, as it was unusual for a former number 1 pick with Smith's resume to accept such a low salary. The agreement, however, was part of a broader clandestine scheme that would have devastating consequences for all involved. Smith would sign 3 consecutive 1-year contracts, each for less than $3 million, allowing the Timberwolves to retain his bird rights. After the 3rd year, the team could exceed the salary cap to re-sign him to a lucrative long-term contract, potentially worth up to $86 million over 7 years. This arrangement was explicitly designed to free up cap space in the short term, enabling the Timberwolves to sign other players while deferring Smith's larger payday. What distinguished this case from rumored wink-wink agreements common in the NBA at the time was that the deal was formalized in writing, a critical misstep that would ultimately expose the entire scheme. The Timberwolves and Smith's agent, Eric Fleischer, documented the promise of a future multi-million-dollar contract, creating a paper trail that would serve as damning evidence of their violation of the NBA's collective bargaining agreement. The scheme unraveled due to circumstances completely beyond anyone's control. After the 1999-2000 season, Fleischer and his business partner Andrew Miller parted ways acrimoniously, with Miller retaining Smith and Kevin Garnett as clients. When Fleischer sued Miller, the legal discovery process exposed documents detailing the secret agreement between Smith and the Timberwolves. These documents, described as 5 undisclosed contracts tightly neatly tucked away, provided concrete evidence of the illicit deal, exposing the Timberwolves' attempt to hide the agreement from the NBA. When the NBA investigation concluded in October 2000, the NBA imposed some of the harshest penalties in league history, describing the violation as a fraud of major proportions. The penalties were designed to send a clear message about the league's zero-tolerance stance on salary cap violations. The Timberwolves were fined $3.5 million and stripped of their first-round draft picks for 5 consecutive years, 2001 to 2005, though the 2003 pick was later restored. Owner Glenn Taylor was suspended from team operations until August 31, 2001, and Kevin McHale took a leave of absence until July 31, 2001. Most devastatingly for Smith, his contracts for the 1998-99 and 1999-2000 seasons, as well as his current 2001 contract, were voided, stripping him of his bird rights and making him an unrestricted free agent. The NBA gave him 2 options: re-sign with the Timberwolves and sit out the entire 2000-01 season, or sign with another team as a free agent. Choosing to continue playing, Smith signed a 1-year, $2.25 million contract with the Detroit Pistons. He returned to the Timberwolves in 2001 on a 6-year, $34 million deal, far less than the $86 million he was promised in the illicit agreement. The scandal fundamentally altered Smith's career trajectory and cost him an astronomical sum of money. Instead of the financial security that an $86 million contract would have provided, Smith played for 12 different NBA teams over 16 years, never achieving All-Star status and retiring in 2011 with career averages of 10.9 points and 6.4 rebounds per game. The financial impact extended far beyond just the lost contract value. The uncertainty and disruption caused by the scandal likely prevented Smith from ever reaching his full potential as both a player and a financial success story. Finally, we have the infamous 1985 draft lottery allegations that almost ruined the NBA's integrity permanently. David Stern's alleged $200 million conspiracy. The 1985 NBA draft lottery conspiracy is one of the most enduring and controversial allegations in sports history, involving not a player's personal financial fraud, but accusations that the entire league's competitive integrity was compromised for financial gain. The stakes surrounding the 1985 draft were enormous, both athletically and financially. Patrick Ewing, a dominant center from Georgetown, was the consensus top prospect, widely regarded as a once-in-a-decade talent capable of transforming a franchise. For the NBA, which was recovering from a challenging period in the late 1970s and early 1980s marked by dwindling viewership and financial struggles, the placement of a player like Ewing could have massive financial implications for both individual franchises and the league as a whole. The introduction of the lottery system in 1985 was itself a response to financial considerations. The previous coin flip method between the worst teams in each conference had encouraged tanking, as teams deliberately lost games to improve their odds of securing top draft picks. The lottery gave all 7 non-playoff teams an equal 14.29% chance of securing the top pick, a significant departure from the previous system designed to maintain competitive integrity while creating more unpredictable and entertaining draft outcomes. Commissioner David Stern, who had assumed leadership of the league in 1984, faced immense pressure to revitalize the NBA's financial prospects. The New York Knicks, coming off a 24-58 season, were among the 7 teams in the lottery, and as a major media market, they were critical to the NBA's visibility and financial health, especially with a $22 million per season CBS television contract nearing renewal. The Knicks had struggled since their 1973 championship, with attendance dipping to around 10,000 per game by 1982, making their revival a priority for the league's overall financial health. The lottery itself was conducted as a public spectacle on CBS, a decision that would later fuel decades of conspiracy theories. 7 large envelopes, each containing the logo of a non-playoff team, were placed into a transparent plastic drum by Jack Wagner, a partner at the accounting firm Ernst & Winnie. The drama of the moment was palpable, with MC Pat O'Brien describing the tension as surpassing that of courtroom trials. When Stern reached into the drum and selected the Knicks envelope first, securing them the #1 pick, the moment seemed almost too perfect to be legitimate. The frozen envelope conspiracy theory emerged from careful analysis of the televised lottery footage. The most prominent allegation suggests that the Knicks envelope was chilled to make it distinguishable by touch, allowing Stern to deliberately select it. A related claim focuses on visual evidence from the broadcast where Wagner appears to pause briefly before tossing the 4th envelope into the drum, seeming to bang it against the edge and creating a visible crease. Conspiracy theorists argue that this crease served as a visual marker, allowing Stern to identify and select the Knicks envelope. What makes these allegations particularly compelling from a financial fraud perspective is the potential conflict of interest that existed within the lottery's oversight structure. Ernst & Winnie, the firm overseeing the lottery, was also the auditor for Gulf and Western Industries, which owned an 81% stake in Madison Square Garden, the Knicks' parent company. Stern, as a New York native and lifelong Knicks fan, faced enormous pressure to boost the NBA's national appeal and negotiating power with broadcasters. A competitive Knicks team with a marquee player like Ewing could potentially generate hundreds of millions in additional revenue through increased television ratings, ticket sales, merchandise, and sponsorship opportunities. The placement of a transcendent talent in the nation's largest media market represented not just a basketball decision, but a business strategy that could reshape the league's financial landscape. If the lottery was indeed rigged, it would represent a massive market manipulation that affected not just the Knicks' franchise value, but the competitive balance of the entire league for years to come. Other franchises that were denied the opportunity to draft Ewing lost potentially hundreds of millions in revenue, while the Knicks gained an unfair competitive advantage that could have lasting financial benefits. Stern's responses to questions about the lottery throughout his career only fueled further speculation about potential wrongdoing. In a particularly notable 2012 exchange with Jim Rome, Stern responded to allegations with "shame on you for asking." The lasting impact of these allegations extends far beyond the 1985 draft itself. The controversy prompted the NBA to switch to a weighted ping-pong ball system in 1990, conducted behind closed doors to reduce perceptions of manipulation. While the league never explicitly cited the 1985 suspicions as the reason for this change, the timing suggests that concerns about the lottery's integrity played a role in the decision. Despite decades of speculation and analysis, no definitive proof has emerged to substantiate the fraud allegations. However, the persistence of these theories and their continued discussion in NBA circles suggests that questions about the league's integrity in financial matters remain relevant to this day. Whether true or not, the 1985 lottery conspiracy represents one of the most enduring examples of how financial incentives in professional sports can create suspicions of systematic fraud that persist for generations. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to watch another fascinating video like this, click on one of the boxes on your screen right now.